far as affordable production knives are concerned, the new Kershaw Emerson collaboration for 2014 has got to be the most talked about and reviewed knife here on YouTube. However, there hasn't been a lot of videos, as far as I can tell, comparing these to the original USA-made Emersons. So in this video, we're going to take the quintessential Emerson, the CQC-7, talk about its history and its significance as far as Emerson is concerned and as far as knife making is concerned. Taking the USA-made CQC-7b as a reference, we'll compare it to the Kershaw Emerson CQC-7k and 8k. So please stay tuned to find out how big of a difference there is between the USA-made original Emersons and the new Chinese versions. Is it a huge difference? We'll have to look. Let's begin with the legendary story of the CQC-7. It's a story that bears repeating. Ernie Emerson is arguably one of the most influential makers of tactical knives, period. In the mid-80s, he was approached by the Navy SEALs to make a tactical folding knife for them, and to that end, he created a knife which adopted the moniker CQC-6, that is, Close Quarters Combat 6, because he claims it was SEAL Team 6 that approached him about this folding knife that he designed. Now, the knife was a runaway success, not just with the operators, but it garnered a lot of wider interest. And in '94, Benchmade approached Emerson about manufacturing the CQC-6 on a larger scale. Benchmade's contract with Emerson expired in 1999, and that year Emerson began production of this same model in his own factory. So you're actually looking at the first year production of the CQC-7. This is a knife from '99. Well, since then, the tactical community has certainly ballooned and exploded. In the midst of the pretending and role play, there is still a small group of dedicated military personnel who are actually still using Emersons in their deployments. And in May of 2013, a CQC-7 was actually carried by a Navy SEAL who was serving as a point person on the mission to kill or capture Osama bin Laden. That knife was actually very similar to this knife and sold for $35,000 actually in a charity auction. At any rate, the knife community has Emerson to thank for bringing the tactical folder to a wider appreciation in the knife community, as well as popularizing the Tanto blade profile. The CQC-7 here remains a classic. In terms of dimensions, overall blade profile, and ergonomics, the CQC-7k is the closest version to the classic USA-made CQC-7b. Differences are primarily in the fact that we have a grind on both sides. It is not a chisel grind, and the fact that it's a frame lock. Now, Kershaw's are very successful in their frame lock design, and this frame lock has come in excellent working order. It has a strong detent. The lockup is very reasonable, 50%. The fit and finish is also very exceptional. Kershaw pretty much makes the nicest affordable knives on the market, in my opinion. Talking about under $50, under $40. You really can't go wrong with this knife. The G10 has great texture, it's very consistent. The blade finishing is excellent. All around, it's an excellent knife. Those looking for a bigger dosage of the overbuilt Emerson reputation, however, might look to the 8K. The 8K is more like an Emerson in a couple of ways. It has a liner lock, and it also features a chisel grind. That is to say that only half of the blade profile is actually ground. Half of it is actually completely flat, as you can see. Although the blade length is only 0.2 of an inch longer, it feels remarkably longer in the hand, thanks partially to the oversized handle. Unfortunately, in my experience with this knife, the highly angular butt of the knife is rather uncomfortable, and the ergonomics of the knife are somewhat questionable. Although the lockup on the CQC-8k is fine, and you can tell it's pretty early, it's actually earlier than the USA-made Emerson, the overall action on the knife is pretty disappointing. I'm not sure if it's a combination of the washers or just imperfect tolerances in this particular knife, but it's tight, it's kind of spindly, and in fact, opening and closing it is always a slow experience. In terms of materials, the USA-made Emerson is certainly built in a more robust way, although to me the differences are somewhat minuscule. You're talking about a slightly thicker blade stock thickness at its thickest point compared to the Kershaw Emersons, talking about a larger and more robust stop-in. This is a feature that is probably actually very important. And then also the use of titanium in the liner lock, which is, I think, going to prove to be a more durable choice than stainless steel, which is used in the CQC-8k. The differences in depth of scale texture are fairly minimal, with the USA-made Emerson being the smoothest, this being an older Emerson. However, over time, I think all of these Emersons are going to be roughly the same to hold in the hand, which is to say it's adequately textured by the G10, but by no means rough. The combination of stonewashing and brushed satin finish on the CQC-7k makes the blade the prettiest of the three, and the fact that it's ground on both sides is for most people going to be the most practical. Of these three knives, certainly the USA Emerson with its chisel grind is going to be the most robust if you're going to be using it for other than cutting tasks. Of course, you can get a USA-made Emerson with the wave, and it is a great feature. There's no way around it, and it's very nice to have that in an affordable knife. Those looking for a USA-made Emerson with a similar blade profile and finishing of the Kershaw CQC-7k just need to look for the USA-made Emerson CQC-7v. A beautiful knife. In terms of ergonomics, I have to say that I prefer the classic USA CQC-7b most of all. The carefully sculpted G10 and linered scales are just such a natural fit in the hand. The 7K comes in a second that is still very strong. It has a large choil that really locks the hand in, and in both knives, the palm naturally is filled by the scales. Comparing the blade profiles and coatings on the CQC-7 and the CQC-8, it's clear that the current state of the American Emerson's coating is in not as good a shape as the brand new Emerson's, but it's certainly not going to stay that way for long. We've got a very nice PVD coating on the Emerson USA, but on the Kershaw, it's definitely just a painted blade, and I've actually seen guys on YouTube taking that paint off very easily, and it's definitely not going to wear as well as evenly as you will see on the PVD blade. On the 8K, you can see that the blade has a little bit more reach. It is evenly flat ground as far as I can tell. You know, the liner locks are going to be something that hardcore Emerson guys might be interested in. I have to say, it just doesn't at all compare, again, to the USA-made Emerson in terms of smoothness. It isn't as thick, and I'm just overall not really willing to put it on a level at all close to the very smooth Emerson. And although you won't be buying these knives because of the blade steel, it probably bears mentioning that 154 cm on the USA-made Emerson is a better steel than the 8CR13 MOV steel on the Kershaw Emersons, although neither of them are considered a superior steel at this point. Lastly, and this is somewhat a small detail, but Emerson clips are famously robust, and the CQC-7's clip is definitely quite a bit sturdier than the Kershaw clips, even though in the event of a Kershaw clip breaking, Kershaw would happily replace it for you at no cost. So to conclude, I would have to say that I'm with everyone being very impressed with Kershaw and Emerson coming out with a whole new line of knives that bring fresh Emerson designs to the masses. The quality of the CQC-7k is excellent. For a $30 knife, I am thoroughly impressed and highly recommend it. To me, it feels like easily a $50 or a $60 knife. The 8K, personally, I would pass on based on a number of factors, including ergonomics and what I consider to be a fairly uncomfortable liner lock. But overall, I imagine that the other frame locks in the Emerson series, at least, are going to be very interesting and enjoyable to own. That said, they don't really compare on an equal level to the USA-made Emerson. In a lot of small details, I've discussed the stop pin, the pivot, the thickness of the blade, the materials for the liner lock. There's lots of ways in which it's just built sturdier. It's not insanely sturdy. It's not really any sturdier than, say, like a Benchmade 710, but it is a rock solid knife, and 15 years after continuous use, this knife feels nicer than these brand new knives. Do you have good experiences with USA made Emersons? How about your experiences with these new Kershaw Emersons? Please make sure to let me know in the comments below, especially if you have any comparison comments. And I really appreciate you watching, checking out these other vids, and your subscriptions. Thanks a lot.